We can get uncomfortable when it comes to talking finance with friends and family, and this discomfort may leave you vulnerable. How do you know if you're in financial trouble? Sean Stack of Bromwich and Smith is here to talk warning signs of financial distress and when to seek help. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Even with the best of intentions, we try to avoid debt, but it doesn't always work. What are some of the warning signs you might need help?
Well, it's a great question. I think it's an important topic, and I applaud you guys for speaking of it. I think one of the very first things that we need to be aware of is if you start finding that you're ignoring what your finances are, so you just keep it right out of your mind. If you have no thought of where that's at, you can end up in a really difficult place because you can end up sort of just wandering off into a different path that you're not aware of.
So I guess if you find yourself just trying to avoid it, that might be a good sign. You know that there's something maybe not so good there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are signs it's impacting your life negatively now?
Well, and I guess the next piece then is if you're finding that you're ignoring it all the time, sometimes the opposite reaction is that you actually think about it all the time. And money's not something that you should be thinking about all the time either. So you stay up late at night and every interaction that you have relates towards where that money is. And it's just constantly on your mind, like a heavy weight on your shoulder, like Atlas carrying the world, because you're concerned about your family and your relationships. So if you find that you're doing that, that's a huge warning sign for you for considering.
Yeah, and people don't need to feel alone because there's a lot of people in this situation in Canada that are maybe living paycheck to paycheck, but that isn't a good thing.
Well, it's a fair question. I mean, when we look at sort of good and bad, a lot of times when it comes down to difficulties with our finances, we sort of frame it in a moral perspective. And I know you didn't mean it that way. It's more of, it's not a great feeling to live that way. And so a third warning sign that we always talk about is that if all of your money is gone, it's spoken for as you're paid. That's a big warning sign to say, hey, wait a second, you're not setting money aside for different opportunities that may come up, which, for example, might be your retirement and ending that cycle of working.
Okay, so if we want to end the cycle of working and being in debt, what do we do next? Is there help available?
Well, there sure is. I mean, the first thing is if you find that your creditors are contacting you and they're reaching out to you and saying, hey, where's my money? Our first desire is to say, hey, listen, I'm going to get it over to you. But the reality is if you had it, you would be giving it over to them. So we often will turn to our friends and family and say, can you loan me some money to cover this? And if that's the case, what you really need to be doing is you really need to be normalizing that conversation of debt like we're doing here today and direct the individual to speak with a licensed insolvency trustee and a debt relief specialist like we have here at Bromwich and Smith.
So what is that? You talk about a person who's in that position in insolvency. Tell us about that.
So it's, to be frank, it's almost all of us. We are, there's recent studies that people are $200 away from being insolvent. And so insolvent's a legal term, and there's two different definitions for it. One is that you're unable to pay your debts as they become due. And that's where a lot of us are right at the cusp, and CERB is ending. And this is really going to hit people in a big way. And we want them to know that there are people in the community, there are safeguards built within our financial and legal structures that allow you to restructure your debts. And that's where a licensed insolvency trustee like Bromwich and Smith comes in to assist in that regard.
And that's right. Look for those solutions and for that help before you get into a really bad place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Have a great weekend. And for more financial advice, you can find a link to Bromwich and Smith at ctvedmonton.ca under Morning Live.
Debt Real Talk with Bromwich and Smith. Free confidential debt relief consultations.